This occurred to me and my then girlfriend in the summer of 2004. I need to provide a bit of context to this first, though, so the context will be in the first little bit. My hometown was decimated by flooding from Hurricane Floyd in 1999. Part of the response and recovery efforts involved FEMA setting up RVs as temporary housing for those homes that were either destroyed or heavily damaged. These RVs were set up in preciously vacant field outside of the town. The park was dismantled in 2001 or so. They put up fencing around the perimeter and trenched over the other streets into the area to keep the people out. But they forgot one entrance or left it purposely open for emergency vehicles to have access. Some friend of mine had found this entrance, and we frequently used this area as our playground. We would go back there to set off fireworks, turn the streets into a race course, and then have sex with our girlfriends. To set the stage on how this place looked, there were 3 streets running east of the orientation. A street that went around to the other side in an old fashion. The grass was very overgrown and about 4 feet high. The south and north side of the area were wooded. The east side had large dirt beams that were about 20 feet high, and had placed over there when the site was graded in 1999. Normally provided a climb challenge for our SUVs. This particular day, my girlfriend and I parked on one of the east and west streets amongst the tall grass to remain hidden. We got undressed to have sex in the back seat of our car. As we began to have sex, I noticed a movement in the corner of my eye. I turned to look, and there was this man coming over the 20-foot-high dirt beam. He's wearing denim overalls, and his left hand is a full-sized axe. A wave of fear washed over me, and I yelled out, "Oh my God!" My girlfriend pops up and looks back at the windshield and loud scream, and what are we going to do? I frankly start looking around for the car keys. There's a pile of clothes in the floorboard and I can't find them. I look out the back and he's getting closer. I can then see his face and it's emotionless with a blank stare. I start grabbing clothes and shaking them to hopefully find the keys. They pop loose and fall to the floor. I grab them immediately and jump into the driver's seat, still completely naked. I start the car from the back seat, still naked. My girlfriend screams, "Go! Go!" I look in the rearview mirror as I'm putting up the car and drive, and now within about 50-60 feet of the car. Same blank look, but staring at my car with the axe in hand. I didn't even fasten my seatbelt, and I'm still fully nude as I fucking floored the gas, kicking up rocks everywhere as the tires spun as I sped away from this man holding the axe. We got out of the abandoned FEMA park as quickly as I could drive the car without crashing. My girlfriend was hysterical the whole time until we got back to the main road and we were safe. We stopped about a mile up the road, on the side of the road, to pull up and put our clothes on and go back to the street to de-stress. I don't even know where this man came from, as there's no houses within a mile of the old famous site. He seemingly came out of nowhere. I also did not see any other cars at the site, as I had done the lap around the park before we chose our spot to park. I'm not sure what his intentions were, as he never said anything to us, and I know he saw us panicking in the car. Whatever intentions were, I know they weren't good. The look on his face and the axe in his hand made that abundantly clear. I went back with a few friends a few days later and found no place this guy could have been looking. There were no signs anyone had been camping there. To this day, it's still one of the scariest events I've ever been through. Whoever the accident was and wherever he was planning, let's not meet. I was 13 and just had my elementary school graduation ceremony. My friends and I decided to stay outside late and celebrate. We didn't drink at this time, so our idea of celebration was playing manhunt or whatever around the neighborhood until about 8 or 9 p.m. As the sun began to set, my friends made their way home one by one. A couple of my friends and I decided to stay out a little longer. To us, this was living dangerously, especially since our neighborhood was considered extremely unsafe. My girlfriend at the time, Victoria, said she had to go home first and check in with her mother to let her know where she was going. We didn't have cell phones at the time. She said she would go home for a second and come right back. She only lived about 2 blocks away from where we were hanging out, so no one made much of it. 10 minutes had gone by and we continued to play our games. 15 minutes had gone by and she still had not come back. I had always been an unusually paranoid person. I currently have an anxiety disorder, so maybe that's why. So when she hadn't come back, I started getting very concerned. It didn't make sense for her why it would take this long to cover 2 blocks and back. My friends reassured me that she was probably just convincing her mother to let us stay outside. Finally, after about 20 minutes, we see Victoria coming up to us, crying with scratches all over her right arm. She told us that on her way back to the park, there was a car following her and she started walking faster because she was getting creeped out. She's used to getting whistled at by older men. She was a pretty mature and brave girl and usually didn't lose her cool when it came to stuff like this that happened. But I recall her saying that this time, a feeling of dread and gloominess washed over her. About 30 seconds later, the car pulled up next to her and a man in a mask came out and tried to grab her. She screamed and tried fighting back. The man was about to drag her in a car when suddenly another car was driving down the road, passing by them. When it came close enough, the man let go of her arm and went back into his car and drove away while she ran for her life back down the park. By the time she got to the park, there were only 2 people remaining, me and Victoria's best friend Jennifer. Petrified, Victoria begged us to walk with her home and said that her dad would drop me and Jennifer at our houses. It was pretty dark at this point, so obviously we agreed. We walked through the field and were walking through our school parking lot when suddenly we get blinded by the front lights of a car. As you would suspect, the man in the mask came out of the car. At first, I thought if he got close enough, me and my 2 friends might have a shot at overwhelming him since it was 3-on-1, and would have a chance to get away. At the very least, I could hold him off while they made a run for it. What happened next stripped me of every last bit of courage I had while fear and panic quickly came over me. 2 other men had come out of the car. One of them was a giant. At this point, I was scared shitless. There were a few meters between us when they came out of the car, but you could hear them talking.
"Ooh, look, she's got a friend. Let's take her too,"
one of them said excitedly. I was probably the most frightened at that point. These monsters were going to take my friends and do God knows what to them. And the chances that they were going to kill me if I stood in the way. I had to think quickly because they were getting closer. The parking lot was at a slight slant, sort of like a driveway. There were bricks laid out to keep some of the teachers' cars from rolling backwards during the day. I honestly don't know what to call what I did next. It was either an act of bravery or complete insanity. I always consider myself to be a bit of a timid boy, even cowardly at times. I always avoided fights and I used to get picked on, even though I was stronger than a lot of people in my grade. But this time something came over me. I quickly grabbed one of the bricks beside me and threw it onto their car. It smashed their left light, which really pissed them off. I yelled at Victoria and Jennifer to run the opposite direction while I held them off. I grabbed another brick and threw at them when they tried to run after Victoria. I did hit to keep them away by my friends a bit of time. Now, I should tell you that I ran track and I was pretty damn good at it. Top 3 in the city, actually. So I was quite a bit strong for my age, and I was more than confident that they wouldn't be able to catch me if I ran. After about 10 seconds, Victoria and Jennifer covered maybe 40 meters or so, giving them enough distance between us. That really pissed the big guy off. He pulled out a box cutter and started charging at me. At this point, I ran to my left and sprinted as fast as I could and didn't look back. I ran all the way to the fence that bordered the school property. Unfortunately, it was way too tall for me to climb, and the men were getting on me quickly. Luckily, I remember that close by, the bottom of the fences were cut open wide enough for me to slide through. I knew this because I used to go through that hole to get my friend Martin's backyard. By this time, the two smaller men were really close while the big fellow was some ways back. I was pretty exhausted since I was running in dress clothes. On top of that, it was dark and I was having trouble finding the hole in the fence. I remember when I saw it, I ran for it as I had been in a desert and saw no oasis or water. I tried to slide under the fence and run to Martin's back door, but one of the men had grabbed my tux jacket and tried to pull me back to their side of the fence. Growing up in this neighborhood, I experienced a lot of scary stuff, but I have to say this was by far the scariest moment of my life. Have you ever felt that powerful feeling that transcends fear? The only way I know how to describe it is death. I felt like death. I felt my heart seize up as my limbs got heavier, all while my mind started becoming hyperactive as the stench of alcohol and the man came flooding into my nose. It was honestly as though the Grim Reaper himself was holding on to me. I knew once I got dragged to that side of the fence, I was going to get stabbed or worse. I clutched onto the fence as tightly as I could. I didn't try saying words at first. I just tried to scream as loud as I could so anyone in the houses could hear me. Then when I noticed the light in Martin's house along with some of the other neighbors turn on, I started screaming for Martin and someone to come please help me. Martin's dad was a very large and terrifying man, and he always kept a machete in his house for safety. He's one guy you absolutely never want to fuck with. So when he pulled out of the backyard door and saw me getting dragged through the fence, he charged at us like a wild boar. The man had let go of my jacket and told his accomplices to run for it.
"Shit, someone's coming! Let's get the hell out of here,"
he said. When Martin's dad got a hold of me, he just cradled me as I sobbed uncontrollably and apparently blacked out in his arm. I don't remember it, but he recalls that I was muttering words telling him to go find Victoria, but I was talking too fast for him to understand properly while my eyes were rolling back into my head. I'm pretty sure I had a seizure. Police and ambulance came and I was taken to the emergency room. I explained to them what happened and that they went to Jennifer's house, where Victoria was staying, and they got her side of the story. There wasn't much the police could have done since they didn't have any idea what they looked like since they had their masks on. They also said incidents like this happen my area so frequently that there was even less they could do, especially without any leads. That's the worst part of it to me. It happens too often. Victoria moved from that area shortly after, and the rest of the time she spent in the neighborhood, she wasn't allowed to leave her house. I too am now living in a different area. Sometimes I go back there to visit my old friends and take a walk around that school park. I love that school, but the memory of that park still haunts me. I still get a cold shiver down my spine when I see it. I never want to go there again. For all the people I encountered there, especially the men in the mask, let's never meet again. I live in a village in the middle of the English countryside. To paint an accurate picture of its size, it has a population of 4,000, but feels more like 1,000 due to its spread out nature and it being surrounded on all sides by lots of fields, farms, and woods that eventually connects onto a pretty famous forest. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere, and because of this, it is notoriously bad phone and internet connections. Having lived here all my life, I know this place like at the back of my hand. I know where all the public footpaths through the woods and fields are, where they connect, which are shortcuts, where to cross deep streams, etc. I've gone on walks in this area throughout my childhood with my parents, and alone as an adult. Nothing bad ever happened. I felt safe there. The story takes place last summer in July after I moved back home from university. I had yet to get a job and smoked a lot of weed, a habit which my parents despised, which I tried to keep hidden from by going on evening walks, multiple pre-rolled joints hidden away in my hoodie pocket. As usual this day, they both got home at 5 p.m. We had dinner but chatted for a while longer than I usually did, as my mom had quite the hectic day and was telling me all about it. Because of this, I ended up hanging out for my walk about an hour later than routine, around 7 p.m. But as it was summer and the sun was still shining down, honestly, I didn't really notice that it would start getting dark as soon as I got out. The woodland closest to my house is less than 5 minutes away, as you enter through the gate into a farmer's field. You can see across the open area quite far until the first set of small woods obscures your view. That's where I was heading, as I knew this track takes under 2 hours and leads back onto the same path I was standing on now. More than enough time to smoke the 3 joints in my pocket and for the smell to leave my clothing, I had thought. This entire area was very popular for dog walkers, so it's not unusual to see other people while you are about, and this is a very small village, so everyone says hello to everybody. I lit my first joint and started walking. I'm just in my own world for a while until I was less than 100 feet before the entrance to the woods. An elderly man was coming out of them, throwing a ball for his collie dog. I finished my joint and stubbed it out. As I got closer, I recognized it was John, who lived in the next road of mine, and he knew my grandpa. We stopped and said hello, and I stroked his dog, Max. While talking, I see another man coming out of the woods. No dog, bright green jacket. Very tall and had a good 10 years on age me as well. Me and John chatted another minute and said goodbye. He warns me not to stay out here too long as it'll start getting dark soon. True, the sky was bright pink and orange. The sun was indeed beginning to set. I hadn't really noticed. I continued on the beaten path down towards the man. When we were nearly passing each other, I looked up to make brief eye contact, smile and say hello like everyone does here, even if you don't recognize the person. My eyes instantly met his. He was already looking at me, his dark eyes locked onto mine. He wasn't smiling. I didn't know him at all, but I knew something was wrong. It was in his eyes. I swallowed my politeness and looked at the ground as we passed. I had lived in my uni city for the past couple of years, so I knew a red flag when I saw one. My country bumpkin manners evaporated. I quickened my pace a little, and before entering the woods, slyly looked back. The guy was wandering around the same direction as I was when I was following John. I felt relieved, laughed, cursed the weed for making me paranoid while lighting up another joint and starting to walk further into the woods. It takes about 30 minutes to follow the path through the woods to each end. The pathway exit opens into another field that led into the woods. The sky was now violet, the dimming light having been obscured to me by the trees. I was already smoking my last joint. I was near the entrance to the second set of woods when I felt it. Fear. Complete, crippling, and absolute fear worked its way like electric through every layer of my flesh. I never felt anything like it before or since, but I knew what it was. I whipped around. Standing at the exit of the first set of woods was the man. I could still make out his green jacket in the fading light. He's fucking doubled back, and very quickly too. I had looked back several times in those trees and hadn't been there. For a second I froze as he did. He knew I'd seen. To sprint the distance between us, it would take him about 5 minutes. He was obviously in good shape. I threw my spliff and fucking bolted into the woods. The only way I could go. I didn't dare look behind me. I sprinted for a couple minutes before taking a sharp left turn off the path into the trees, hoping it would throw him off for a bit, but I couldn't see a fucking thing. The light was already darkening and the trees made it 100 times worse, especially as I was now in the thick of them, their branches catching on my clothes like fingers, whipping around and scratching my bare legs so bad I bled. I ran and my lungs were protesting in pain, hating me for smoking so much, while my heart was throwing itself against my ribcage trying to escape. I couldn't anymore. I threw myself on the ground behind a particularly thick trunk, my back against it, knees to my chest, hand thrown over my mouth as I stifle my labored breathing, desperately trying to pump air into my lungs for this next sprint. I listened for the first time. A few seconds pass silently, then I hear him. Heavy footfall snapping twigs behind me, about 20 feet to my left. I dare not look in case he sees me. I have my phone, but I know I had a little chance of signal being where I was, and I knew he would either hear me or see the light from the display. I'm not ashamed to say at this point that I started to cry, the tears silently falling down my cheeks.
What the fuck?
I hear a deep voice exclaim,
Where are you? I know you're here. I just saw you.
I have to clasp both hands across my mouth to stop my scream from escaping. I can hear her moving around. I panic, and I find enough courage to slowly peek from behind the tree. He was about 10 feet behind me, less than 20 feet to the left with his back to me. I move back my eyes and search for the area around me. I picked up a pretty heavy rock. I carefully check on him again. His back is still turned and he's searching through the trees, hunched down lower to the ground now. I make a snap decision. With everything I had left, I threw the rock behind me into the right. It immediately clattered through the branches of the trees and made one hell of a noise. I watched him immediately bolt in its distance, laughing. He fucking laughed. I paused a little, hearing his footsteps get quieter until I thought I wouldn't be so visible to him if I moved and threw myself forward. I ran, trying to put as much distance between us as possible, but I was so aware that I was getting further and further away from home. I knew I had to be near a stream somewhere close. If I found the stream, I can follow it as it borders the land and ran parallel to some of the footpaths. I ran and ran until the trees finally cleared and I can just make out another field through them on the other side. I thank God and pushed myself a little bit further until I'm out of the trees, and then the ground disappears from below my feet and I go head over shoulders down the stream embankment. I crash into the water below, my open mouth and lungs getting filled with muddy water. As I splutter it out, I feel both relieved to have found the stream and terrified he's heard me. My phone is now ruined. I slowly make my way downstream as quiet as possible, listening out for the whole time as the stream borders the woods, looking up periodically just in case. After a while, maybe half an hour, I notice the trees begin to thin out and realize that this is the edge of the woods where I would have been exiting and where the pathway connected to the original one I started on. If I ran, I could get home in less than 20 minutes. As quiet as I could, I dragged myself on my stomach and back up the embankment, army style, wanting to stay as low as possible. I peeked over the top. I could just make out the opening of the woods and exit path about 50 feet away. I sat and scanned the forest lines for a couple minutes, my eyes trying to make out the movement despite now being pitch black. Nothing. I couldn't hear either. I pushed myself up and sprinted as fast as I could across the field into the pathway. I knew the gate I entered through was in the adjoining field. It really wasn't that far. I was so happy.
You fucking bitch!
Came from a scream across the field. I swear my legs nearly gave out then and there. He had been waiting for me. I turned my head and saw him sprinting out of the woods at full speed. I screamed and pushed myself further, tears coating my face. All I could do was run. I crossed into the main field now that I could see moonlight shining off the metal gate. My house was just 5 minutes away after that. I never focused on anything as much as that gate. He was faster than me and getting closer, screaming at me the whole time how he was going to slit my throat. I ran and ran, pushing myself up and over the gate and ran through the road. I dared look as I made one turning to my road. He was still fucking following me. I raced up my driveway and threw myself through the door, running into the living room, crying and screaming hysterically, pointing behind me towards the door. My dad ran outside while my mom grabbed a hold of me as I collapsed shaking. As it turns out, my parents had already called the police. As I said, I was going out for an hour or so at 7, and it was now past 12 a.m., and I hadn't answered my phone when they had called my now broken phone, which was very unlike me. We called the police again to explain. They came over and I gave a full statement. Both my parents and the police were horrified. Nothing like this happened here. There hasn't been reported rape or murder in the last 100 years. But one look at me and it was obvious I was telling the truth. I was covered head to toes in cuts and bruises, soaking wet and covered in mud and blood. I won't go into how this experience changed me. It's really depressing. But I will say the thing that scares me most is that they never even had a suspect. Despite him following me so closely, he was gone by the time my dad ran outside. The guy's still out there, and who knows what he's really capable of.